Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Z here on behalf of Metal Mastermind. Today, I wanted to talk about, some mixing frustrations, some common mixing frustrations. I mean, you can call them mistakes, like whatever. All right, mixing mistakes, but I call them mixing frustrations because to me, it's not that you're necessarily doing something wrong. It's just that you're doing something that you might be shooting yourself in the foot and not even knowing it. And I know this because I did it. All of these that I'm going to talk about, I've done for years and years and years. Some of them I still do, and I got to catch myself not doing them. Mixing in solo. So the trick with it is it's not to never work in solo, because obviously the solo button is there for a reason, but to get in and out of solo as fast as you can. And like a good example of that might be like, if you notice that there's masking in the guitars, or if you notice that there's something that you don't like once you get your guitar tone, that might be the time to start moving things down next to the drums while they're playing. But maybe if you want to get a little surgical with it, you'll hit solo and find the frequency that's really bugging you, and then get right back out of solo, and then you have drums and guitar. Which kind of brings us to the second point, which is to not get hyper-focused too early on. In the early phases of a mix, you should be doing really big, broad stroke moves. Sound like a snare? Good. Moving on. Bring the kick up. Does it sound like a kick? Good. Moving on. And I mean, don't even worry about like, oh, it's not the right kick. Like that has, too much 300. Like, oh, okay. Like we'll get there. But like first, bring the kick into the mix. Let it live in the mix for a minute. I'm guilty of this as well. It's totally fine to, adjust small settings. I hear people all the time argue this with compression settings. In tutorials and videos online. There'll be a 20-minute video about this guy moving from 4 to 1 to 3 to 1. And you're like, bro, it's not even in the context of the mix. Like, how do we know that it sounds good? So all those things are to consider. Like if you're working in solo, or if you're doing hyper fixating moves, like make sure that it's in context. Make sure that you're mixing. Breaks. Back in the day, they used to call it studio head. When you're sitting in front of the console or in front of the DAW for too long, something about moving faders and moving sounds and things like that, like you just get stuck in your own head and lose what you're even doing, like what the song's about. And stepping away for even like 5 or 10 minutes will save you hours on the back. You go back in with fresh ears and immediately go, oh, this kick has too much 10K in it. Whatever it is that needs fixing, you can fix so much faster if you get back with a fresh set of ears. But it does take discipline. Again, I'm guilty of it, because that's kind of like the learned behavior from the other jobs that I've had, that like, if you're doing something, you just want to get it done. You want to pound it out. I mean, I set alarms now to go off every half an hour, give myself a break and come back with some objectivity. Stay away from your eyes. It sucks. Everything is crafted to your eyes. When people are selling you plugins, they're going to convince you that the more colors it has on it, or the prettier that it looks, better it's going to sound, cooler it is. This thing that looks like an analog compressor, it's got to sound like an analog compressor. It's just a graphic. It doesn't mean anything. And one of the best examples of this is Reaper, which is a DAW I use. It looks like ass. It looks like Windows 95. One of the good things about it is you don't get stuck on how pretty it is, and you don't, all these waveforms, dancing lights and all this stuff. And you, ooh, look at my DAW. And instead you kind of had to focus on your ears, because it's not real pretty to look at. Like the satisfaction has to be in your ears. Use your ears, bro. Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them. Another thing that can really help you is to use reference mixing. It's an insider trick, and like so much of that insider stuff, like is gate kept for so long, and they're not quick to give up their secrets, and maybe rightly so. You know what I mean? Like that stuff was precious gold. It's handed down from producer to producer, and kept stuff really tight to the chest. But now a lot of these things are out in the open, and one of them is reference. Like if you have a song that sounds somewhat similar to what you're doing, reference it, pick it up. Listen to where the guitar is sitting with the kick drum. Listen to more than one reference. Listen to references that are outside the genre. Wonderful tools out like Metric AB. But you could just as simply like drag and drop a bunch of songs into your DAW, level match them, and then, see where things are from section to section. How loud is the snare in the chorus? Can I get away with this? I have to push the envelope on, stand on the shoulders of the people that came before you. Watch your plugin count. I know, because you see all the pros and they have 25 plugins on every channel, but it doesn't matter unless it matters. So much of when I coach, when I work with students, is why is that on there? Like, we'll pull up a mix that they have and they'll say, all right, I want this to sound like this. And they'll have, 7 plugins on it. And I'm like, all right, so why is this there? And I swear to God, this is the most common answer is they go, I don't know. I just thought it needed to be there. Yeah, I get it. I used to do that too. I used to, I saw someone else do it. I saw someone on a YouTube tutorial do it. And I was like, oh yeah, for sure. I'm definitely going to need, to have this plugin there because it was in their chain, but I don't know what it's doing. Put as many plugins on it as you want, but make sure that when you're doing it, that you're doing it with intention. Make sure that you have a reason for putting something there and that it's not just like something that you saw somebody else doing. A good exercise is to say it out loud. I'm putting this EQ on the snare because I want it to sound a little bit more, whatever the case may be, whatever tool you're using, say it out loud. And if the answer is, I don't know why, then don't use it. Arguably the most important thing about mixing, your mixing environment. And again, it's one of the things that people will try to sell you, like you need this pair of headphones, you need this, and you need this. And if you don't have this foam in this right place, you should be mixing in a room that Like ideally, you want to use something that's a little bit more high end, get better quality from better sounding shit. But it's kind of like guitars in that, like, if you go usually from like $0 to $200 is a certain kind of guitar. And then between like $250 and $650 is a certain kind of guitar. And then $700 to about $1,200. But after $1,200, like, they don't really improve, at least in my experience. And literally sat there and been like, why is this $4,000 and $5,000? It makes no sense. And then like whoever it is will explain to me and they'll be like, oh, well, that's, it's that rosewood came from a fisherman's ass. Some ridiculous reason why it has to be that expensive. And like they do the same thing with speakers, but there's different reasons for those things too. Those are like for midfield monitors that don't really apply to you mixing at home or mixing in a small studio. Like if you're mixing in a proper studio that has midfields, they might have something that's like $12,000. But for our purposes, for mixing at home or mixing in the box this way, what's drastically going to improve your mix is sitting in front of your monitors and listening to music. And there's other things like SonarWorks and Slate VSX, which I have on right now, which are absolutely worth their weight in gold. Less trips to the car to make sure that everything sounds good. And maybe you don't have the money to do that right now. Maybe you're in the early days and you don't know what to do. That's fine. That's fine. Just get a pair of headphones that you like, that you think sound good, and listen to music on it. Listen to music. Make sure that you're referencing. Make sure that you know what good music sounds like on that source. We have the Metal Producer Overlord series, which is a series of modules of how to mix, how to solve problems in a mix, practical mixing, things like that, which help you solve problems and get better at mixing, ease these frustrations. Love to talk to you. Join the inner circle, become part of the group. Hopefully we'll see you there.